Many years ago, I had a medical colleague who would respond to policy questions with, "Where is it written?" I later learned it was a Jewish tradition to read from the Torah each week, and that the Torah was the final word on issues of ethics and biblical law. Fast forward to the present day and the topic of today's sermon. Where is it written that we should be organized and function in a particular way? Yes, we have the 7 principles and the 6 sources, but we also have our bylaws, policies, and procedures. When it comes to our congregational life, I like to say, where is it written? In 2006-2007, while I was president of the congregation, I chaired a committee that reviewed all of our policies and procedures, including our bylaws. Along with the late Warren Matthews, an expert in corporate organization, and Carol Agate, an administrative law judge, we revised all of these documents, submitted them for review by the board and approval by the board or the congregation in the case of our bylaws, and I then paid to have all of these documents uploaded onto our website. Much has changed in the last 15 years, so it is appropriate for us to review and revise our bylaws at this time. I look forward to finally reading what our bylaws committee has created for our review and approval. Come, let us worship together.
Thank you, Charles. I really appreciate, I love that title, Where Is It Written? That could be the title for some of what we'll be talking about today. But good morning to all of you. Namaste, salam, peace on this beautiful day. My name is the Reverend Jeremiah Kalendae, and I am delighted to serve this congregation as its developmental minister. And I am joined by our extraordinary worship team this morning, and we are all glad to be with you. If this is your first time worshiping with us, or if you're new to our congregation, we extend a special welcome to you and hope you'll return in future weeks to learn more about this amazing community. We light our chalice to open our service. With the kindling of this flame, may we feel the luminous radiance within, remembering its abiding presence in our hearts, our minds, and our bodies, and its being here among us in the generous sharing of our love.
Good morning, everyone.
I used to think I wanted to be famous. I'd be recognized out in the crowd. But the funny thing is, every time I've gotten what I want, it lets me down. Now I just wanna look more like love. I just wanna look more like love. This whole world is spinning crazy, and I can't quite keep up. It's the one thing around here that we don't have quite enough of, and I just wanna look a little more like love. answers. I used to need to know that I was right. I used to be afraid of things I couldn't cover up in black and white. But now I just wanna look more like love. I just wanna look more like love. This whole world is spinning crazy, and I can't quite keep up. It's the one thing around here that we don't have quite enough of, and I just wanna look a little more like love. I find the farther that I climb, there's always another line of mountaintops. It's never gonna stop. And the more of anything I do, the thing that always ends up true is getting what I want will never be enough. So I just wanna look more like love. I just wanna look more like love. This whole world is spinning crazy, and I can't quite keep up. It's the one thing around here that we don't have quite enough of. So I just wanna look more, a little more like love. Like love.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Community Church of Santa Monica. I'm Charles Haskell. I go by the pronouns he, him, and I am your worship associate today. We are delighted to have all of you present, wherever you are, whether you are in the sanctuary or in our online sanctuary. We are glad you are here. If you are new to our community, our website, UUSM.org, provides many ways to learn about our community and to become involved. After today's service, there will be a Zoom coffee hour for those watching our streaming service online, and a more traditional coffee hour in the courtyard. And if you are here and need to use a restroom, we have one located in the front and another located in the building to my left. These are the only bathrooms available because of the new entrance that's being constructed on Arizona. We offer programs to serve the needs of our congregation and to be of service to the larger world, including broad religious exploration and personal development for people of all ages. We also join with other social justice advocates to work for justice and harmony in our world. Unitarian Universalism is not defined by creed or dogma, but is guided by 7, soon to be 8, principles that affirm the worth and dignity of every person and encourage an individual search for truth and meaning. We honor the wonder of existence and believe that we are connected to each other and to the interdependent web of life. Our beliefs come from 6 sources: Scripture and science, nature and philosophy, personal experience, and ancient tradition. We are an open, affirming, and welcoming congregation, diverse in backgrounds, identities, spiritualities, and philosophies of life. We are united in our desire to create an inclusive, beloved community, to live the principles of our faith, and to serve the wider world. and we are a dedicated peace site. Whatever your beliefs or faith tradition, we invite you to help us build a community where together, in our diversity, we may covenant in love and justice. May you find comfort, camaraderie, and inspiration here. As we gather in this space and in our virtual spaces, we recognize that we are connected to one another through the winds that give air to all beings and through the waters that move deep into the earth and up into the sky. We acknowledge that the ground beneath our feet is and always has been the home of indigenous people, many of whom have been forcibly removed to other lands. Announcements. Dining for Dollars. Thanks to all who have paid for your Dining for Dollar events. However, some of you have not paid yet. A reminder statement was sent out recently, and it is very easy to click on checkout and pay by credit card. If this is impossible, then please mail a check to the office. Thank you. If you have questions, email auction@uusm.org. The choir is back on August 28th. Everyone is invited to join the choir. The choir will be meeting at 9:30 a.m. on August 28th to sing for the water communion service, and there will be a choir retreat in the sanctuary that afternoon from 1 to 4 p.m. Regular rehearsals will resume on Thursday evenings from 7:30 to 9:15 p.m. in the sanctuary. All voice parts are welcome, especially tenors and basses. Please email music@uusm.org if you are interested in joining the choir. Let's make music together, especially with some additional men. New Members Meetup. Remember, New Members Meetup is now on site every Sunday. I have two announcements, one from Cassie Winter and James Whitker that came in after the Thursday announcements. From Cassie, she writes, "The women and community will be meeting at 12 noon on Sunday, August 28, under the shade structure. If you haven't been to one before, you are more than welcome to join us there. We will begin with a potluck lunch. Please contact Jackie Weber if you would like to RSVP or to obtain more information." And from James Whitker, "All are welcome to join the Faith in Action, Peace and Social Justice Committee July meeting at 12 p.m. today in the cottage. The Peace and Social Justice Committee works in many ways to put UU values into action in our local community and the wider world. This month, the committee will continue its focus on congregational organizing with UUs across the nation to support reproductive freedom and abortion access in the wake of the Supreme Court's decision overturning Roe v. Wade. Please welcome Rochelle and Dela, our child care people today. Rochelle and Dela, would you stand, please? They will be heading over to the cottage now. Kids are encouraged to stay in the sanctuary to hear the story for all ages coming up in a few minutes, or they can go to the cottage right now to be with Rochelle and Dela for some fun activities. Today, after the service, like every Sunday, you can help make lunches for bunches. The funding for that program needs to be replenished. You can donate online and choose Hunger Fund from the program support list. More information about events such as our weekend at the Benville Pines in September can be found in the email that is sent to all members every Thursday. Now please rise, embody your spirit, and stay standing for our covenant. Opening hymn.
Before we sing our hymn, I would like to qualify that you need not necessarily be male to be to join our tenor and bass section. We accept a a variety of, the broad spectrum and honor the broad spectrum of gender identities when joining your choir. When joining our choir, we just base it on your vocal range, essentially. So everyone's welcome. Please join us. We will be preparing a concert this fall where we will feature Elizabeth Alexander's Kindling, which is a 30-minute long work. Elizabeth Alexander is a very famous UU composer, so we'd love to have more people in the choir. So come join us. Email me at music@uusm.org. And now let us sing our opening hymn, which is from the Purple Hymnal. We don't have the Purple Hymnal here in church. It's the Spanish language UU hymnal. So we'll take it very slowly. We'll take it slowly, and then we'll sing it twice, just so we become more and more familiar with this hymn. Libertad no es despertar una mañana sin cadenas, es algo más. Libertad no es poseer las llaves de todas las puertas, es algo más. Libertad no es construirte solitario un mundo aparte, es algo más. Libertad es convivir, decidir, elegir. Libertad es amar, comprender y luchar para que todos tengan libertad. Once more. Libertad no es despertar una mañana sin cadenas, es algo más. Libertad no es poseer las llaves de todas las puertas, es algo más. Libertad no es construirte solitario un mundo aparte, es algo más. Libertad es convivir, decidir, elegir. Libertad es amar, comprender y luchar para que todos tengan libertad.
now time for all ages. It's appropriate to bring your food donations here to the front, and the story will be narrated by Natalie Kahn.
Good morning. Did we lose all the children, or do we still have some here? They're okay. Well, they'll hear it later. So I was very taken with Charles's opening about where is it written, and it reminded me when I was growing up of hearing that expression a lot. So, for example, my mother used to say, when we were going to somebody's house for dinner, she'd say, "So where is it written that we have to bring a hostess gift?" And other very wise sayings like that. I'm also reminded of, and you may recall this too, of where is it written, the famous line by Yul Brynner in the Ten Commandments, so it shall be written, so it shall be done. And in that case, it was pretty much like a dictatorship, right? It was written down by somebody and immediately it was done, and nobody voted on any rules, nobody had any debate, it was just done. That was it. It was over. So it shall be written, so it shall be done. Well, it also reminded me of a lot of documents that we have and had in history where something was written down and there was a lot of debate and it had to be voted on and then passed. We have that in our CC&Rs and homeowners associations. We have that in our churches, including the bylaws in this church, and we have that in our Constitution of the United States. Soon, interestingly enough, very soon after the Constitution was signed, very soon, almost immediately, there were people who said, like Madison and Jefferson and Franklin and George Mason and others, they said, wait a minute, this is not complete, this is not done. We need and that's how the first 10 amendments called the Bill of Rights got written. And the Bill of Rights, as many of you, although not all of our politicians are aware of, the Bill of Rights, the first one in particular, talks about the protection of our rights, First Amendment rights, it's usually called. And one of the things I wanted to bring to your attention today is the part about the separation of church and state, because ironically, the reason that was put into the Bill of Rights, it was demanded or it was required or it was debated hotly by the most religious people who came over to our country. The most rigid and the most what we might call today right-wing conservative people wanted that in there. And the reason they wanted that in there is because a lot of them came from England, and the Church of England was the law, and they did not want to adhere to the Church of England. They had their own version of God and religion, and so they wanted that in the Bill of Rights to protect their freedom so that they, in their own religion and in their own way and in their own church, could practice as they chose. And I think that's a great rule, don't you? I really do. But there are, both in the past and in the present, people who think that this is a Christian nation and we were founded on the Christian religion and religion should be taught in the schools. And that reminded me of when I was a little kid in the 4th grade, and we had this terrible teacher. I'll never forget her. She was so strict. Her name was Miss Harris, and Miss Harris after lunch, every time we'd come in to the classroom again after lunch, she would sit us down and she would read us from the New Testament some passage. And I was only 9 years old, but I just knew there was something wrong about that. And it made me uncomfortable, and I wasn't sure why, but I just knew in my gut, even at 9 years old, that that wasn't right. That just made me feel like I didn't belong there, and there was something wrong with me, that I didn't enjoy that. So we, again, having emerging today, some of those same people putting forth the same arguments that we should teach religion in the school, and it's a good thing to do. And I think the First Amendment, with the mandate for the separation of church and state, to me, and maybe to many of you, is the most important, one of the most important amendments. And we had other amendments that followed. Why did we have other amendments? Because over time, even though the Constitution was written thoughtfully and carefully, albeit by old white men, no women, no people of color, but nonetheless was written very well, that, times were changing, and slavery, for example, so there had to be other amendments written to the Constitution in the same way that today, Reverend Jeremiah is going to talk to you about in a minute, in the same way that we have bylaws in our church that may need to be updated, have been carefully considered and long discussed, and people have worked very hard to make suggestions to the amendments, if you will, to our bylaws, and that will be put in front of you, and it will be put in front of you for your consideration as we go forward. So I'm hoping that that you learned a little bit about the Constitution and a little bit about the Bill of Rights, and you're soon to learn a lot about our bylaws. And that's our story for today.
When the summer sun is shining over golden land and sea, and the flowers in the hedgerow welcome butterfly and bee, then my open heart is glowing, full of want for everyone. And I feel an inner beauty which reflects the summer sun. In the cool of summer evening, when the dancing insects play, and in garden, street, and meadow linger echoes of the day, then my heart is full of yearning, hopes and memories flood the whole of my being, reaching inwards to the corners of my soul.
We enter our time for spiritual practice by centering ourselves and opening our beings more fully to the wonders and mysteries of life. You're invited to become fully present in this moment, letting go of any of the ways you may have been holding just a bit too tightly to the past, or maybe preoccupied with something in the future. To become present to yourself, your body, and this place in this very moment. Allow awareness of your breathing to center you in your core. Feel the weight of your feet on the earth, the groundedness of your seat, and the sturdiness of your spine holding you upright. Becoming fully present to yourself in this sanctuary, let us join in moments of prayerful contemplation, followed by a few minutes for spiritual deepening through silent meditation. Let us turn our awareness inward to that which dwells in the depths of our beings, the place where some go to discover what is divine within. Let us breathe into that space, one slow and deep breath at a time. Allowing it to gradually expand, to embrace our whole selves. Allowing each slow and deep breath to bring a greater serenity, greater clarity, a more complete wholeness. We enter this place of still mystery, inspiration, and creativity. We offer one slow and deep breath at a time, allowing each breath to open and nurture any places of constriction, any blockages, any tensions, any stresses. We breathe with luminous awareness, cultivating spaciousness throughout our beings, one slow and deep breath at a time. Let us meditate now in the beauty of this silence for a few short minutes. I will ring our singing bowl to end our time for silent meditation. dedicate this time in our common practice to the liberation and happiness of all beings everywhere. It is so good to be with you all this morning after a few weeks away for study and reflection and perhaps most importantly, rejuvenation. I missed each of you and our beloved community. And I hope that you too had a chance to travel and rest and play after the challenges and stress of these few pandemic years. I know that it's been particularly important for me to step back from ministry to find centeredness, inspiration, and joy by connecting with family and friends and returning to those activities that nourish my heart and mind and body and spirit. We have to continue to be gentle with ourselves, our relations, and our larger world as we emerge from these long traumas and the many losses and new stresses that visited our lives all too frequently in recent history. I began my summer with a pilgrimage to a Hindu ashram that I had been waiting to visit since I first moved here. It was closed until just recently, and it was such a blessing to make some new friends with the monastics and kindred spirits who lived there. This was followed by a silent retreat at the Franciscan Retreat Center, and while I was there, I learned that the time for spiritual refreshment and rejuvenation was best saved for a season other than the summer in the hot and air-conditionedless monastic cells of Malibu. It looked like I was in paradise, but it felt like I was somewhere else. Lastly, I traveled to Ohio to be with my family and friends there for 2 weeks. I was able to be with my grandmother while she was hospitalized and a dear friend who was enduring the same, and to see more of my family and friends than I had in many, many years. I wonder who it is that you're connected with or would like to connect with in this season to bring more ease and joy into your life. What activities are you turning to, or should you be turning to replenish your spirit and take advantage of all of the life-giving energies and the beauty of this season of summertime? Now, next week, we'll inaugurate our new church year with our annual ingathering and water communion service. Now, as we pour libations of water for renewal in this multi-generational service, I invite you to consider what aspirations you might name for yourself and our beloved community. What is it that you need, and what is it that we need to continue on our journey to spiritual wholeness after so much depletion and brokenness in our lives and in our society? What new commitments might you make to your own well-being, to the well-being of your loved ones, your spiritual community, or your society? What do you need, and what are you willing to offer and to sacrifice to bring it into being? Please sit with these questions this week and come and share those needs and hopes and goals for this first church year, mostly out of the pandemic, inshallah, heaven willing. Now, I hope this will be a new church year of health and wellness, goodness and joy, peace and ease for all of us. So may our hearts ponder these questions, and may we share our lives with each other beside the cool and refreshing sacred waters of our beloved community next Sunday. Now, we've endured more than can be named in the 3 years since I arrived to serve as your developmental minister. We learned to expect the unexpected, as each month seemed to bring new apocalyptic horsemen to our doors. Now, we know the good book said there were only going to be 4 horsemen, but those of us who take religious scripture seriously but don't take it literally know that 4 horsemen was just an estimation. The pandemic destabilized our lives and the entire globe. 6.5 million people have died globally from the pandemic, and about 1 million of those deaths have been here in the United States. Millions more are suffering the long-term consequences, medical, psychological, social, and economic. And people are, of course, still getting sick, and the virus is still continuing to mutate. We faced one natural disaster after another, including so many fires burning close to home and a long drought, all exacerbated by the predictable consequences of climate change. We witnessed firsthand the lethal consequences of white supremacy allied with a militarized police force. Our hearts were shattered again and again and again as precious lives were taken from us in the plague of guns and violence that infects this nation. We watched in horror as Russia launched unprovoked violence on the people of Ukraine and threatened the world with nuclear war. The fundamental human rights embedded in the U.S. Constitution evaporated overnight with the overturning of Roe v. Wade by authoritarian religious zealots appointed by a man who had later summoned his radicalized followers to storm the United States Capitol. So if the past 2+ years have been a struggle for you, if you're still dealing with the aftermath, don't worry, it's not you, and you're not alone. You're doing amazing against all odds and amidst epical challenges none of us signed up for. Now, thankfully, this isn't the whole story, and it certainly isn't where the story ends. The pandemic also connected us like never before, and a global effort to create a vaccine resulted in new science, new technology, new medicine, and many successes that saved countless lives. The Inflation Reduction Act was just signed into law by President Biden, and it is the single largest investment in clean energy in our history. Right? And it indicates that the political will now exists to seriously address climate change. The movement for Black lives caused the country to once again reckon with the plague of white supremacy culture and the many of the officers who were guilty of perpetuating the state's reign of terror against communities of color have been held accountable for their crimes. Another first in our nation. We passed the first gun control legislation in decades. And like the efforts to combat the pandemic, climate change, and systemic racism, it falls short of what's needed. But it's another step in the right direction. Russia's war on the people of Ukraine was strengthened the resolve of democratic societies around the world, and new leaders like President Zelensky modeled courageous leadership in the face of tyranny. Here at home, people are showing up with their votes to reject the authoritarianism of religious fanatics. The attempted insurrection was a failure, and the American people are at least now more conscious of the threats against our cherished freedoms and our democracy. An apocalypse is literally an unveiling, and the events of the past 2+ years summoned us to dispense with our illusions and face the reality of these challenges that are before us. Now, our little congregation here on the corner of 18th and Arizona in Santa Monica, California, here we've held high the banner of the liberal spirit through all of the tumult and strife of this time. We've organized, we've marched, we've protested, we've lifted up our values, we've UU'd the vote, we've given our time and resources, and we've continued the work of not accepting the world as it is, but rather striving to make it as it could be. One important developmental ministry task that's occupied some of our time for the past year has been revising and updating our congregation's bylaws to address current realities and reflect current best practices. Now, we have to remember that the practice of democracy itself in this country began with the indigenous people who occupied these lands before the European settlers arrived, and it was influenced by the practices of our religious ancestors who established democracy as the form of government we've embraced for the past 2.5 centuries. In 1142, the great law of peace of the Iroquois Confederacy established many of the democratic norms that would influence the colonists as they were giving shape to this new nation. It was in our ancestral churches, in this cultural context, far from the reaches of the monarchy and the papacy, that people had begun to govern themselves without totalitarian political or religious authorities. We continue this 3 centuries old tradition of congregational polity every time we elect leaders, pass our budgets, call or hire ministers, elect denominational leaders, and take important stances on the contentious issues of the day. The bylaws of our congregation are what give this democratic process here in our spiritual home its shape and guarantee its continuance. We're grateful for the many leaders who have carried this torch, which embodies our 5th Unitarian Universalist principle of the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. The last revisions of our bylaws was completed with the wise and discerning leadership of one past president, Dr. Charles Haskell, Judge Carol Agate, and the late Warren Matthews. May his memory be a blessing. This ongoing work of nurturing democratic life was continued with the leadership of past presidents Patricia Wright and Beth Brownlee, John Zinner, Bob Dietz, and me. And I want to thank all of these leaders and those whose names remain sealed in the annals of time for the countless hours that they've invested in securing our democratic spirit, process, and practice. In the next few weeks, you'll be receiving a copy of the proposed revision of the bylaws for your consideration, as well as a summary of the revisions that we had presented at our 2 Bylaws Refresh town halls. I hope you'll read through the proposal and provide any feedback and or gratitude to our Bylaws Refresh Task Force. Once everyone has had time to digest and reflect upon the proposed changes, and the task force has had an opportunity to consider the feedback, a special meeting of the congregation will be called this autumn to consider their adoption. Now, although I don't have enough time to go through all of the proposals line by line as we did in the town halls, I will share a broad overview of the work and changes. Our guiding principles were that our process and that the proposed bylaws themselves should reflect clarity, trust, transparency, simplicity, and interdependence. We incorporated the recommendations of the UUA, streamlined and organized the proposed bylaws to make them consistent with current best practices, and removed some sections which were matters of church policy or were best defined elsewhere. We updated provisions to allow for online congregational meetings and noted changes in the UUA, like our new Pacific Western region. We added faith in action to our purpose statement, and this included our commitments to anti-racism, anti-oppression, and social justice work as a congregation. We included leadership development in the work of the nominating committee to think more holistically about how we cultivate and support and nominate our leaders. We reduced the total length of the bylaws by about 50%, but did not fundamentally alter the basic facts of how we practice our democracy by electing leaders, holding annual meetings, passing budgets, and the like. The proposal probably isn't perfect, but I think it could become a model for other congregations who are refreshing their governance documents in this time. Now, perhaps the most substantial change the proposal includes is the possibility of evolving the name of our church to include the word congregation. We're recommending calling our community the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Santa Monica, in addition to our historic designation as community church. We know that the congregation has evolved its name multiple times in the past. We were founded as All Souls Unitarian Church, then we became the Unitarian Community Church of Santa Monica, and then we became the Unitarian Universalist Community Church of Santa Monica, which is quite a mouthful. We know that consideration of changes to our name have been contentious in the past, but we found a model in another congregation that revised their bylaws and simply added congregation and kept the historic designation, allowing either to be used. We liked this both-and approach and thought perhaps it might be a way for us to better move away from those mindsets of polarization and embrace more both-and thinking as a community. We thought congregation could be more inclusive for members of the LGBTIAQ community and our Jewish and humanist and multi-religious members. We noted that many UU and Jewish communities are moving towards the designation of congregation instead of church, society, fellowship, temple, or synagogue to be more inclusive. We also noted that congregation was shorter and might be a bit more easily marketable in our digital age. We are UUSM, after all. We also appreciated that community church is what we've been known for many decades in the community, and that it has many positive and meaningful connotations for many of our members. We will poll the congregation in the coming weeks to see if there's significant support in the congregation for this both-and change and evolving the name of our beloved community. We decided that we would only put forth this proposed change to Article 1 of the bylaws if we found that there was significant support within the community. So be on the lookout for that, because we do really want your feedback. So let us gather next week for our annual ingathering and water communion service with our loved ones, families, and friends, and bring with us our hopes for ourselves and our spiritual home. Let us consider with wisdom and discernment how we practice democracy within these walls and beyond them. And let us live with gratitude for the treasures this community brings into each of our lives. Amen, and blessed be.
Our practice is to dedicate half of our non-pledge Sunday offering to organizations doing work in the world that advances our Unitarian Universalist principles. The other half is used to support the life of our church. This month, half of our Sunday offering will go to Dee Dee Hirsch Mental Health Services, a nonprofit organization that has been serving those most in need and least able to pay for more than 75 years. Your support helps them provide high-quality mental health, substance abuse, and suicide prevention services to children and adults throughout Los Angeles and across the nation. Our ushers will now collect the offering in the sanctuary. You may also donate by text, online with our website, or by check. To donate by text, call 844-982-0209 with the amount and fund for the donation. For example, text $10 GCC for a $10 donation to the Generous Congregation Fund. For text donations, a one-time only credit card registration is required. Thank you so much for all that you give monetarily and especially all that you give of yourselves to build our community.
Our offertory anthem this morning is called Take a Stand. And just to qualify the language here that could be potentially perceived as ableist, we are taking a stand with our hearts, our minds, our spirits. This is not to, disparage those who cannot physically stand up. We are a community that recognizes and tries to avoid, that ableism in this language.
Take a stand for all that you believe in. Take a stand for everyone in need. If our aim is true, we must follow through. Take a stand. Take a stand whenever they reject you. Take a stand together and with pride. When they walk on us, we will make a fuss. Take a stand. We will stand wherever there is silence. We will stand to make our voices heard. We will stand and fight until the day is won. We will take a stand. Let us take a stand. Let us take a stand. Say a prayer for all of our oppressors. Say a prayer whenever you're afraid. When they shoot and sting, we will shout and sing. Take a stand. We will stand against the ones who silence. We will stand forever in their way, making songs to show them that our day will come. We will take a stand. Let us take a stand. Let us take a stand. Feel free to sing along. Let us take a stand. Let us take a stand. Let's do it a cappella. Let us take a stand. 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 Thank you. Please rise in body or in spirit for our closing hymn. So our closing hymn today is taken from the same set of songbook. It's called the Justice Choir Songbook. It was developed maybe 2-3 years ago in Minnesota. It's not in our hymnal. So we are gonna learn this line by line and before we sing it together.
So let's do call and response. I will sing the first line, and please repeat after me. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. And change will come to you. And change will come to you. Together. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. And change will come to you. Be the voice you want to hear. Be the voice you want to hear in the world. Be the voice you want to hear in the world. Be the voice you want to hear in the world. And change will come to you. Be the light you want to shine. Be the light you want to shine in the world. Be the light you want to shine in the world. Be the light you want to shine in the world. And change will come to you. Let's go back to be the change. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. And change will come to you. Let's try this one more time. And let's find a neighbor that you can face and say these words to. Be the change you want to see in the world. Ready, and 1, 2, 3. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. And change will come to you. And change will come to you. And change will come to you. One last time. And change will come to you. Thank you.
As always, may you go in peace. May you hold fast to that which is good. May you return to no person evil for evil, but strengthen the faint of heart, support the weak, help the afflicted, honor all beings. Go and be blessed and be that change you want to see in the world.